Welcome to this explainer. Look, the digital marketing world is undergoing a massive shakeup right now, and that's exactly what we're unpacking today. For years, this industry relied heavily on what you could basically call stealth surveillance, right? Quietly tracking clicks, hoarding cookies, monitoring personal habits. But today, we're exploring how the absolute most successful companies are abandoning those hidden tactics completely. They're actually transforming privacy, ethics, and legal compliance into a massive competitive advantage. There's this fantastic insight from Harvard Business Review research that just perfectly sets the stakes for us here. Customer trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and is impossible to buy back. When we talk about data protection and compliance, we are not just talking about dodging regulatory fines. We are talking about the very foundation of your business. Because let's face it, without consumer trust, you simply don't have an audience. So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the privacy growth strategy, then look at legal versus ethical marketing, dive into dark patterns, touch on influencers and environmental claims, and wrap it all up with how to actually build a responsible campaign. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the privacy growth strategy. For the longest time, the assumption was that managing customer data privacy was just this annoying, defensive legal burden, a necessary evil that supposedly slowed down your growth and ruined your ad targeting. But Harvard Business Review reveals a completely new reality. Companies have to stop treating privacy as a defensive chore. You can actually use it as a deliberate growth strategy to empower your customers and build unshakable loyalty. It's a total game changer. Because we have all failed the creepiness test at some point, haven't we? You know the exact feeling. You buy dog food exactly once, and suddenly an ad relentlessly stalks you across every single website you visit, starting with, as a dog owner. Consumers are pushing back hard against this kind of digital surveillance. People are way more aware of how their data is used today. It proves that just because you have the data doesn't mean you should exploit it. Personalization absolutely works, but only when it doesn't cross the line into invasive surveillance. Moving into section 2. Legal versus ethical marketing. Here is a critical distinction to keep in mind. Compliance is literally just the starting line. Sure, laws like the GDPR in Europe or PECR set rigid rules about mandatory consent so you can avoid massive fines. But ethical marketing, that goes way further. A campaign can actually be technically legal, but still feel incredibly invasive to the user. True ethical marketing is all about honesty, ditching those pushy sales tricks, and prioritizing fairness over a quick, short-term conversion. Because simple missteps, they can trigger severe consequences. Just look at these scenarios. Using a sneaky cookie banner with pre-ticked boxes, that directly violates GDPR and e-privacy rules and leads straight to heavy fines. Or what about data function creep? That's when you take an email someone gave you just for a digital receipt and you start spamming them with daily sales offers. That breaks the rule of purpose limitation and completely destroys trust. And if you get into illegal targeting, especially with minors or sensitive health data, you're looking at immediate ad account bans and massive public scandals under laws like the Digital Services Act. Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, Dark Patterns and Deception. The Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, is actively hunting down deceptive practices right now. They've identified these 4 specific tactics engineered to trick and trap consumers. And listen, these aren't just poor design choices. They are intentional interfaces built to steer users away from making informed decisions. Think about those fake countdown timers that constantly reset, or an ad disguised to look exactly like an independent news article. It's pure manipulation. And the FTC is publicly calling out companies for crossing this line. Take ABC Mouse. They were caught forcing users through this hidden, confusing maze just to cancel a free trial, even though they promised easy cancellation. Lending Club falsely promised no hidden fees while deliberately burying mandatory junk fees behind tiny tooltip buttons. And smart TV maker Vizio, they actually enabled default settings to share consumers' viewing activity with third parties, providing only a brief, easily missed notice. In every single case here, material information was deliberately hidden. So I want you to ask yourself this question every single time you look at a user interface or plan a campaign. Does this design support an informed choice? Because if the answer is no, like if you literally have to hide the reject button or you're confirm shaming a user into staying subscribed, you are relying on manipulative design. And worse, you're actively eroding the trust your business relies on. Okay, Section 4, Influencers and Environmental Claims. Let's look at truth in advertising. When it comes to influencer marketing, everything, and I mean everything, revolves around this concept of a material connection. It's not just about paying someone a huge sum of cash. If an influencer has any financial, employment, personal, or even family relationship with a brand, or hey, even if they just got the product for free, the law requires a disclosure, and that disclosure has to be virtually impossible to miss. The FTC's 101 guide lays this out so clearly. Burying a vague thanks at the bottom of 50 hashtags, yeah, that absolutely does not cut it anymore. You need clear language, like hashtag ad or hashtag sponsored. On video stories, the text has to be superimposed long enough for viewers to actually read it. And this should be obvious, but you literally cannot say a product is terrific if you haven't actually tried it, or if you actually thought it was terrible. Shifting gears a bit to environmental claims, the FTC's green guides cut right through the marketing fluff. If you want to label a product degradable, you must have scientific proof that the entire product or package will completely break down and return to nature within 1 year of customary disposal. If it's just going to sit in a landfill for a decade, you absolutely cannot legally call it degradable. So how do you avoid the greenwashing trap? First, drop the broad, unqualified claims. Slapping eco-friendly on a box is almost impossible to substantiate. Instead, you need to back up specific benefits with actual scientific evidence. And you have to analyze trade-offs. It is highly deceptive to call something green just because it has recycled content, if the actual process of using that content causes worse environmental harm overall. All right, our final section, number 5, building a responsible campaign. We've covered all the risks and dark patterns, so let's look at a practical blueprint. The UK's Information Commissioner's Office offers this brilliant 4-step checklist to make sure your campaigns are sound. First, explicitly define your purpose for why you need the data. Second, map your data and partners. Know exactly who gets the information. Third, secure a lawful basis, meaning get valid consent before you fire off any tracking pixels. And fourth, design for choice. Make sure opting out is just as easy as opting in. The big takeaway here, stop relying on stealth surveillance. Ditch the third-party data brokers. You need to collect first-party data directly from your audience by offering them genuine value. Give your customers an easy, transparent preference dashboard so they can choose exactly what they want to receive. That transforms a rigid privacy rule into an amazing relationship-building tool. I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative rule of thumb for all your future campaigns. If your strategy relies on hiding a fee, obscuring a tracking pixel, or making a cancel button invisible for it to actually be successful, is it time to completely redesign it? Thanks for joining this explainer. Stay curious and keep designing for trust.